I am an ultra-MAGA Republican. I'm also a Jew, a gypsy, a homosexual. I am anything that a government that politicizes police and demonizes different opinions wants to call the enemy. I am an American citizen who is horrified at what seems to be happening. I happen to teach the history of fascism, of National Socialism, and of communism. It's my trade and my craft and my vocation to study the patterns of totalitarianism in hopes of awakening in my students a perspective that allows each of them in their own way, with their own values, to look at the world and see dangerous patterns that will help them awaken to threats to their freedom, their convictions, that they might be better active citizens. In this job, I make no distinction between people who happen to agree with me and people who do not. My vocation is to awaken independent young Americans to their duty and to their heritage. And one of the key elements of this American Republic is that we don't take our political opponents and put them up against a wall and fill them full of lead just because they happen to disagree with us. We accept a loyal opposition because inevitably we will be that loyal opposition someday. Inevitably, always in a free society, power ebbs and flows. What that means is that if a group or a party or a president is in temporary control of the reins of government, they do not have the right to turn principled opposition into thought crime. And they do not have the scope to turn people who are good and who are smart and who happen to fundamentally disagree with the ruler's priorities and programs and principles into enemies of the state. But that is what has been suggested by Biden, and that is what is being done in his name as I speak. In the name of protecting our democracy, Americans whose only crime is that they are not progressives like Biden and his inner circle, are being harassed by law enforcement, plagued by legal claims, and punished with criminal sentences. What has been done to President Trump is now being done to scores of principled Republican and conservative leaders across this nation because they are connected to what Biden has demonized as the extreme MAGA Republicans. That is un-American. Our president is engaged in an unprecedentedly un-American purge. And what's most disturbing is that not only is he in violation of his solemn oath to the Constitution, but so is everyone who takes part, including the members of the permanent bureaucracy, including the members of the FBI, including the members of law enforcement that are being used as SS, as Gestapo, against Biden's political enemies. I have already come to conclusions about the validity of all of the mail-in votes in the 2020 presidential election, which were at variance with the common narrative. And I have come to conclusions about other things that are at variance with the president's preferred narrative, such as January 6th being the product of ultra-MAGA Republicans. January 6th, to me, seems like the result of agents provocateurs, that is, agent provocateurs. It is an old Russian and French and European tactic of installing police spies into subversive groups or groups identified as enemies of the state. And the purpose of those police spies is not simply to inform the authorities of what could be genuine chicanery, domestic terrorism, or revolution. No, the purpose of those police spies is to incite ridiculous, provocative acts so that the subversive group, alleged, can be outed as genuine enemies of the state. It is a means by which a government tarnishes the reputation of its enemies by itself provoking the kind of anti-government action which is on its face illegitimate and caustic to the body politic. That is how January 6th seems to me. And given all of the questions about the details of that day and about how the law enforcement authorities and National Guard were prevented from taking anticipatory steps that would have kept things under control, yeah, I question the narrative as I question the validity of the 2020 election. Does that make me an enemy of the state? Does that make my opinions misinformation? Or does it simply make sense that given suspicious circumstances, some fair-minded, well-intentioned citizens might question whether the emperor's new clothes are as grand as they seem to be to those who are supposed to be the influencers over society? Despite my misgivings about the 2020 election and the January 6th riots, which I must admit pale into insignificance compared to the rioting in Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon, that Democrats cheered on as mostly peaceful protests for over a year. Despite my misgivings about the official narrative of both of these things, Biden took the oath of office. He has the nuclear codes. He is acting as president of the United States. And for the moment, and hopefully for good, I hope that the remedy to this is the elective process. Elections that will come this November of 2022 and 2 years from now in 2024. I believe in America, and I believe that the American system can survive an attempted coup or two by self-interested, corrupt politicians and by career-minded, ambitious bureaucrats who genuinely believe that they are indispensable to the republic and that they are there as a failsafe against a misjudgment by the electorate. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that the answer to anti-Americanism is Americanism. For example, free speech, which these groups oppose, suppress, and censor. I believe in it. And I believe in it in a traditional American way. Unless your free speech is shouting fire in a crowded theater, which is going to inspire a stampede that will get people killed by being trampled, or unless you are actively conspiring to assassinate the President of the United States, which is an attempt to deprive not only the acting president of his life, but the people of the United States of their choice expressed through the election. Unless you are using your free speech to commit actual crime, free speech is for everyone. Free speech is for racists, Nazis, Klansmen, homophobes, I said Nazis, but it really is for Nazis, communists, anarcho-syndicalists. Free speech is for Satanists, fundamentalist Christians, Orthodox Jews, radical Hindus. Free speech is for everyone. It is not simply for those who express opinions that don't offend the well-heeled and don't disturb the comfortable. In this country, we're allowed to say anything we want within the broadest possible limits. And yet, generations of Americans have been trained by totalitarian gulag universities to believe that speech should be controlled for the common weal, for the greater good. People with disturbing, different opinions should not be allowed to intrude upon the safe space of delicate snowflakes. And this idea that was permitted by people on college campuses 25 years ago is now the default setting within business in the United States today and within government. And that means that the ultimate end to the suppression of alternative opinions is for a political police to enforce control over expression, just like they do in China under the communists. No, this is not a future that is in any way harmonious with the US Constitution. No, I do not accept that my speech is violence. I do not believe in hate crimes. Crimes are actions. Hate is a human emotion that we all possess, including the most tolerant. Well, just ask them. They'll tell you they are the most tolerant people among us. Look at the way these tolerant people treat President Trump, treat conservatives, treat people who are pro-life or who are pro-control over our borders. Our progressive, tolerant, diversity-oriented, fellow citizens immediately claim that anyone who happens to disagree with them must be a bad person and their opinions must be suppressed. That's not diversity, any more than a president of the United States claiming that his primary political opponents are a danger to our democracy. Both are un-American. We have abided the slow creep of totalitarian thinking to intrude upon our educational institutions, our religious institutions, our institutions of enterprise, of community, of media, and it is intruding on our institution of governance. And the spear tip of governance is the coercive power of the state. We, Americans of goodwill of all political groups, of all flavors, of all colors, must remember that when a single group or person's rights are unrighteously taken away, illegitimately stolen from them, the rights of the rest of us are imperiled.